As we continue today's special tribute to the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who died yesterday in Cape Town at the age of 90, we shall now be joined by three persons from South Africa who knew him pretty well to talk to us about the life and times of former Archbishop of Cape Town. So we'd like to welcome to the show Dr. Mamphela Ramphele, Chairperson of the Archbishop Desmond Tutu Trust and Spokesperson for the Tutu family; Nonceba Mhlauli, President of the African National Congress Youth League; and Tshepo Ditshego, a Desmond Tutu Leadership recipient. Good morning, ladies, and Mr. Ditshego, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you very much. First, our commiserations, our condolences to you personally and to the people of South Africa and government, and also to all Africans and every one of us who shared out of the humanity of the late Desmond Tutu. Dr. Ramphele, I would like to start with you. What kind of man was he? How do you remember him in terms of his legacy, in terms of his symbolism, and in terms of the implications of his legacy?
Thank you very much for having me on the show. Archbishop Desmond Tutu will be remembered for being kind of human being who embraced and exuded what is Africa's greatest heritage, which is the philosophy of Ubuntu. How to be human in a way that you see others in you and see yourself in others, which would make it absolutely imperative that you act with love, compassion, respect to everybody, regardless of their station. And also the issue of social justice. Archbishop Tutu believed that social justice should characterize who we are as a people, who are sacred creatures of God, whom he believed in very deeply. He was a very deeply spiritual person. So the legacy of Archbishop Tutu is a legacy sorely needed, not just in South Africa, but on the whole continent, to get all of us to heal our brokenness and to re-embrace the values of Ubuntu so we can live in peace, with dignity, with self-respect, with respect for others, and with social justice.
Thank you, Doctor. Nonceba, you're the president of ANC's Youth League. How will you and the ANC be remembering Archbishop Desmond Tutu, fondly known as the Arch, considering that he was highly critical of the ANC? But when you hear the former president, Thabo Mbeki, or his comments today on Desmond Tutu, they're moving, a glowing, commemoration of the great man. What is your take?
Good morning, and good morning to all your viewers in Nigeria, as well as my fellow panelists. I think that as young people, we will definitely remember Comrade Desmond as someone who always spoke truth to power, irrespective of whether that was the apartheid government, irrespective of whether that was the South African government that is currently led by the ANC, and irrespective of whether it was the African National Congress itself. The one value that we really take away from his life as a lesson is the fact that he remained true to his convictions, even when those convictions were against his own government, even when those convictions were against his own president, even when those convictions were against his own party. He was someone who always challenged what he thought and believed was an injustice. And I think that's the one thing that we will always remember about him.
Okay, I'll come to Tshepo Ditshego, Desmond Tutu Fellow. you met him, in the later years, being part of the Desmond Tutu Fellowship. You interacted with him, and I know in those interactions, it was always sort of like passing on the baton to the next generation. What was that charge you would always say, to you Desmond Tutu fellows?
So in our discussions, what really impressed me about him was that he always seemed to interweave God in his messages. He was a very God-fearing man, and that was very inspirational for me as a Christian, because I feel like he embodied, God's values and what God was trying to do on earth. And in the brief time that we met, I saw him as almost as a lighthouse. A lighthouse for sailors is symbolic of it's almost a beacon for where you go to be. And in stormy weather, it always guides you to shore. And because he was so purpose-driven, we were all inspired just engaging with him. We were inspired by his empathy and his caring for people. So in the first time we met him, he told us that we all have a talent, we all have a unique talent that we've been given. The worst thing that we can do is use those talents for selfish interests. We need to, as Tutu Fellows, go out there and use whatever gifts we've been given by God to help other people. And that was quite a powerful message for us, because it really emphasized that the lighthouse is telling us that we need to always look out for others before we look after ourselves. And for everyone in the Tutu Fellowship, we always reflect on his lessons and his teachings when we grapple with issues on our different groups and when we debate certain topics. So he was definitely a lighthouse and continues to be. And even instead, we'll continue to see him as a lighthouse.
Well, let me come back to you, Dr. Ramphele. One of the points we'll be making this morning is that, Mbeki is gone. When I mentioned Mbeki earlier on, I was referring to Govan Mbeki. Although some people have sent me text messages saying, which Mbeki? I said, well, there's an Mbeki, the father. Okay? President Mandela is gone. F.W. de Klerk is also gone. And now Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And this looks like the end of an era for South Africa. How much of an end of an era is it? And South Africa after Desmond Tutu, the same question we asked after Mandela. What do you think are the big takeaways in that regard?
Thank you very much. Before we go into that particular question, I just would like to remind everybody that Desmond Tutu did not belong to any political party. He was a man of God fighting for social justice without a party political platform. And that's one of the major takeaways that we have from the example of his life. He was not an anti-apartheid struggle hero. He was a social justice champion. And he did that through his spiritual life. And he infused that spiritual life in everything he did. The example of the values of Ubuntu, which is a very core African value, which we lost. And we ended up embracing other people's cultural values. And this is where we lost the plot as a continent. And I think that the issue of after Mandela, after Tutu, what next? We need to remove this preoccupation with individuals. Individuals are there to show us the way. I like very much Tshepo's metaphor of a lighthouse. The lighthouse is there to show us the way, but there are many young leaders, and Tshepo and Nonceba are some of them. There are many older than him, many younger than him. And what is really important about Desmond Tutu is that His whole life, the same thing with Mandela, was always to hand over the baton to the next generation. And so let us not imagine that when one leader dies, the values and the aspiration for social justice has died. No. Social justice and the values of Ubuntu are eternal. And we of South Africa, citizens of Africa, need to now show up. Every day of our lives must be a day that we are paying tribute to our leaders by following their examples and promoting social justice.
Well, just before Tunu takes the next question, you talked about Ubuntu twice. I recall that J.S. Mbiti, the Kenyan philosopher, in his book Introduction to African Religions and Philosophy, defines Ubuntu as the African philosophy that says, I am who I am because you are. The interdependence, okay? So, wow.
Well, I thought that was very well said, Dr. Ramphele. I thought that was such a really inspiring charge. And I'd like to take it from our future leaders in South Africa, the two of you here on this panel. What are your thoughts? I'll start with you, Nonceba. What are your thoughts on the future of the Rainbow Nation? Obviously, racial segregation is now a thing of the past due to the tireless work of men like the Arch. But other social injustices persist. What is your take and what is your plan for the future of South Africa?
I think that one of the sort of seminal moments in the history of South Africa, which was also by Comrade Tutu, and I'll call him Comrade Tutu, and I'll explain why I call him a comrade, is because it was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was the TRC, which really sought to bring about the uncovering of some of the injustices that would have happened during apartheid, and as well as bringing about reconciliation, and the report of that commission actually proposed a number of things, recommendations that include issues around wealth taxes, issues around the land question, and issues around national cohesion or social cohesion in the country. And I think that the missed opportunity in that was the fact that a lot of that work was actually not really implemented to the fullest. And where you find South Africa right now, 27 years into democracy, is that there remains high levels of inequality between, the rich and the poor. There remains high levels of poverty, as well as high levels of unemployment, especially amongst young people. Even though in law, racial segregation is no longer there, the economy, by and large, still does depict an economy wherein a particular race is better off than the other. So I think that taking leave from our heroes, your Tutus, your Mandelas, and all of those phenomenal comrades that contributed selflessly so to the building of this beautiful country. For us, really, at the moment, it would be ensuring that we really come up with ways that will, in practice, deal with those triple challenges. Because the issue of, the country has come so far in the past 27 years. We've been able to consolidate our democratic project to the point whereby we, continuously have free and fair elections. We've just come from elections 2 months ago at the local government levels, and we generally have stability in the country. However, the perpetuation of the economic inequalities within the state, that is which really, I think, is a threat to this hard fought for democracy that we have today. And that's where our focus is as young people, to ensure that the generation of Comrade Tutu, Comrade Mandela, and so on and so forth was the generation that brought us, political freedom. And our current struggle is a struggle for economic freedom, and that is where we are focusing our energies at right now as our generational mission. Thank you.
Well, Tshepo, is your focus also on economic equality for the future of South Africa?
So my focus is slightly different. South Africa has a lot of challenges. And, I think we all have to select which lane we follow. And I also believe that we need to build on the legacy of our heroes as well, because I think they've done what they needed to do. They've ran their race, and it's our turn to pick up the baton. One of the things I'm very passionate about is gender-based violence. South Africa, unfortunately, is a country where there is a lot of violence against both men and women, and a lot of women are victims of rape. And for me, my cause is to see how we can mobilize young men to start thinking about how they can start the healing process of understanding why they think it's okay to abuse women and why they think it's okay to violate women, and to start treating our women with respect, and treat them with the respect that they expect other people to treat them with. And I think it's a scourge that if we can address and we can start taking care of it and reducing the numbers and making people aware of how they need to be, it will set us up for the kind of society that one wants to live in. No one wants to live in a society that mistreats any gender, whether it's women or men. And I think that is one thing that I am passionate about. When I do fellowship, one of my passion points was corruption. And I did what I could. I started a Facebook group talking about corruption. I think that is a cause that still needs to be fought hard for and to be eliminated. So that's an ongoing mission. But for now, I think gender-based violence, not only in South Africa, but all across the continent, is something that we all need to work hard to eradicate.
Okay, I'll come back to Dr. Ramphele. We'd like to know, further arrangements, funeral arrangements by the family. We understand the 1st of January he will be laid to rest on the 1st of January. What are the other arrangements? And I'd like to also know what the Tutu Foundation will be doing, as regards broadening this spirit of, you say, Ubuntu. I'd like to say Harambe, for instance. This spirit of pulling together and solidarity, because it is lacking. It is lacking tremendously on the African continent. I think the words of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah rings true in the 60s when it says, the problem with Africa is not about, fighting the colonial past, but will Africa unite? And that was a formative question Nkrumah did ask. But it shows many years down the line, unity is still shaking. We're still having cases of genocide raging on the African continent. We're still having cases of tribal appetite going on. Even in South Africa, race relations is not great. It's not where it ought to be. So what will the foundation be doing as regards all of this?
Thank you very much. Let me just correct one thing. There is the Tutu Trust, which looks after the IP of Desmond Tutu and Leah Tutu, and that promotes the collection, the identification, the archiving, but also the promotion of the values of Desmond Tutu, particularly this issue of Ubuntu, and I'll come back to it to respond to your question. The Desmond Tutu, Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation is the practical programming part of the two sister institutions. The foundation has an annual peace lecture. They hold exhibitions. And so coming back to the program, I will demonstrate how we work together. But let's get back to the issue of values. Both Nonceba and Tshepo's focal points, whether it's socioeconomic injustice or inequality or gender-based violence or corruption, at the heart of it is the need for Africa and Africans, including South Africans, to recognize that gender-based violence, corruption, the inequalities, the failure to unite as Africans are symptoms of an Africa that has not yet made peace with who we are. Ubuntu is about understanding that our humanity is defined, as Mbiti said, by being interconnected, interdependent. Harambe comes naturally,
That's just
which in South Africa we'll call it Litseng, from the value of Ubuntu. So in terms of what is going to be happening during this week is that we are going to have, starting tomorrow, there are people who are having memorial services in Pretoria on Wednesday. On Thursday, we are going to have a coming together of the two sister institutions, the Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation and the Tutu IP Trust, to host those who are close to the Archbishop, the friends, the supporters, the fans, to just say who is Desmond Tutu to each one of us, so we can celebrate it. Friday, he's going to lie in state at the St. George's Cathedral, because as we all know, he was a deeply, deeply spiritual person, and that was his cathedral. And then he will be given a requiem mass on Saturday, and the president will read the eulogy, but it will be essentially a requiem mass with within the context of an official funeral, category 1, with all of the pomp and circumstance and the celebration of this brilliant,
thank you very
compassionate son of Africa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramphele and Nonceba, and also Mr. Ditshego. Thank you very much for joining us. And Dr. Ramphele, I like your distinction between Ubuntu and Harambe. Harambe is just a label for community work. Ubuntu is philosophy. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again, once again, our condolences.